Another story that I want to talk about is Bryan Danielson. Maybe you guys saw this, maybe you didn't. And if you didn't see it, it's okay because I'm bringing it to your attention. Bryan Danielson was, WWE reached out to him, basically. Now, on the main channel, I talked about this about a week or two ago. He was trying to get the trademark for the yes chant. Obviously, Bryan Danielson was Daniel Bryan in WWE. It wasn't necessarily a cease and desist, at least that's what he's saying. In a new interview with Luke James, he basically clarified that his manager texted him and said, hey, this trademark is available. Do you want to get it? And he's like, how much does it cost? And he says it wasn't that much money. So he says, okay, sure. But then shortly after, he got an email from WWE and their legal team stating that this was infringing on this or that. And he's like, dude, I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I just do my own thing. Now, keep in mind, nobody really knows what's happening here other than the fact that WWE is going after Bryan Danielson for the yes chant. Now, keep in mind, in AEW, he hasn't done the yes chant. The wrestling fans will do it, but he hasn't. They don't have the yes, yes, yes in his entrance theme song. It's not part of his identity. It's not part of his merch. We all thought it was going to be part of his identity. We thought it was going to be part of his merch. That wasn't necessarily the case. And that's because WWE reached out. Now, WWE does have the tendency, by the way, to let trademarks go. I mean, we've seen sometimes, like, they just don't care about the trademarks, or sometimes they're not as invested in the trademarks. But there have been people that got released or they quit WWE, and then years later the trademark becomes available. WWE lets it slip through the cracks, and that talent will end up getting the trademark. I know a thing or two about trademarks. It's really not that hard of a process to get one, and it's not that expensive to get one. But WWE obviously went after Bryan Danielson. I think the reason why they went after Bryan Danielson is because Bryan Danielson probably doesn't have plans to go back to WWE. I think he's kind of made that very clear. Like, we know he's at the tail end of his career. We know that once he drops the AEW World Championship belt, he will not be full-time in AEW, which that makes sense. But I do think we have gotten to the point with Bryan Danielson that, like, even after his career is over, he's probably going to be working in AEW still. Maybe you guys didn't know this either, but he is part of the disciplinary committee for AEW, which actually I think it's a good thing, having a experienced veteran in that role. Like, that's cool. But I think he's been so public about his love for AEW and what it means to be in AEW that WWE was like, well, fuck it. We're not going to be able to sign this guy. And if they're not able to sign him, they're not going to be able to bring him back, right? We'll prevent him from making money. And that's essentially what they're doing with the trademark thing. Now, by the way, this is not a dirty tactic. WWE has done this before. They've done this with other wrestlers. So I wanted to show you guys that. I want to tell you guys about that. And also just a couple things you guys should know too. Bryan Danielson, he couldn't use the name Daniel Bryan in AEW because that's also owned by WWE. But you have other wrestlers being able to take their names to other companies and stuff. So, like, at times it seems like WWE is being petty. This is one of those times where I think they are. You also have times where WWE is like, hey, screw it, you could go do your thing, we don't care. And it's hit or miss. And I think WWE chooses based on what is actually valuable. Now, I don't know if you guys think the yes chant or whatever is like a valuable thing, but for me, I look at that as an intellectual property that could have a lot of money coming in. Because when Daniel Bryan was in WWE, we all saw all that money coming in for merchandise. The red shirts with the 3 yeses on it, like that was a very valuable IP for WWE. And that's what WWE's in the business of doing. That's where I think AEW probably screws up the most, honestly, is the intellectual property aspect of things, because we all know that, especially in like the TV and entertainment business, trademarks are such a great way to make money. And as long as you keep renewing as long as you keep doing it, like it's I don't know. I feel like, listen, not to have a brain fart, but like, if you come up with IPs, for example, and you create merch and video games and all these different things, right? Like, you can make money on it. We have gotten to a point where in the TV and entertainment business, a lot of companies are making a lot of money. Warner Bros. Discovery obviously had the intellectual properties for Batman. Like, anytime they want to license that out, they can make money on it. They can make residuals. WWE has these trademarks. They own these trademarks. Anytime they want to make money off of it, they can. And AEW doesn't tend to do that. And I never understood why AEW doesn't tend to do that. But in this event, WWE is preventing Bryan Danielson from making money. And in turn, it's preventing AEW from making money. But if you look at the reports, usually what ends up happening, any trademarks that are usually filed for AEW, by the way, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but a lot of them, it's the individual wrestler going for the trademark. Like, it was Bryan Danielson going for that trademark, not AEW. So sometimes you'll see Chris Jericho apply for new trademarks and he'll do stuff on TV with those trademarks, but they're not owned by AEW. So that's actually a really major point as to AEW having that disconnect. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. For sure. You need to keep that in mind. Because WWE figured it out from a legal aspect, from a merchandising aspect, from a financial aspect. It's just better to own these trademarks. And sometimes for people, they think it's not a big deal. And maybe Bryan Danielson doesn't care as much because, like he says, he's not trying to sell anything. But if he owns the trademark, no matter how much he tries to tell you that he ain't trying to make money, like, no matter what, it doesn't matter, because if you own a trademark, you can make as much money as you want. I see some people in the chat saying, I thought you can't own a common word. Well, it depends on the purpose that you're trademarking something. So that is something to keep in mind as well. What you trademark could, you'll see like AEW applies trademark for AEW Collision for entertainment purposes, TV, exhibition, wrestling, whatever. If you look at the USPTO, the United States trademark office or whatever, like, you have to have a reason for why you're trademarking it. Because you can have the same thing trademarked, but for other reasons too. So that is something I have seen before in the past. So that is something to keep in mind, obviously. Definitely something to keep in mind. So yeah, who knows? WWE went after Bryan Danielson. I thought that was kind of crazy. I could totally understand why WWE would do it. Now, was it a formal cease and desist? I don't know. It doesn't sound like it. But they definitely went after him, and we'll see what happens.